We were born brothers. Competition made us friends. This isn't a quote by some famous poet or a great orator, but rather from a Toyota commercial. But the message still applies in my family. Me and my brother are not the same person in the slightest. And if we weren't related, I'm not sure we would ever become anything other than acquaintances. But being born into the same family forced us to interact. Many times, we'd look like what everyone pictures brothers to be. One of us would do something annoying, we'd argue and yell at each other, and eventually a fight would erupt. Luke has always been bigger, stronger, and older, so I usually ended up on the losing side of these battles. If a stranger saw me and my brother together, they would most likely think that we were enemies, whose one desire was to ruin the other's life. In fact, these people might be right, because it seemed like Luke had attempted to kill me on multiple occasions. These occasions have resulted in a broken elbow and a chipped tooth, but I'm sure he was attempting to do more lasting damage. Our battles and stretches of unbrotherly love could only be suspended by sports. No matter what was happening in both of our lives, we could break down the barriers between us with a game of wiffle ball or some catch in the backyard. I'm not saying we became the best brothers during these events, but we were able to put aside everything except the game, and this was our piece together. For a long time, it seemed like I was always chasing Luke. My sole aspiration in life was to be the best. Not in the world or in the school, but in the family. My life in second place started at birth, being born 2 years after my brother, and I spent every waking minute trying to make up the gap. One day, I got the chance to prove to my brother that I was, in fact, the best in the family. My brother and his two friends were looking for a fourth player to even the wiffle ball teams, and I was the only one on hand. I knew this was my time to shine and jumped on the opportunity to prove myself. Unfortunately, I soon found this attempt to impress him would go unnoticed, because in my third inning, my team was losing 11-0 to my brother's team. After the seventh home run, I decided that quitting would be better than losing and ran off the field towards the door, avoiding any further confrontation. As I reached the door, I turned to look behind me and saw a rapidly approaching plastic bat hitting straight for my head. A few years later, an event happened that changed my view of my brother entirely. We were watching a football game, and as a family, and when the first commercial came on, we threw my dad a ball and asked him to play. This was our ritual. Whenever we watched TV, at commercials, me and my brother asked my dad to play. Football one-on-one, and whoever had the most points at the end of the show won. There was more danger involved in our version of football, though, thanks to the fact that the back area where we played had a pool table and a bar, making for some pretty deadly obstacles. Now looking back on this, it was an awful idea, but at the time, it was wonderful. On one particular play, my dad threw me the ball, and my brother came and swatted it, knocking me to the ground. I fell and landed on my arm, and my brother fell over me and landed right on top of me, causing my elbow to go the wrong way and shattered the bone. My mom was in the other room, but when asked about it, she said she heard the "get your keys" scream, which means that someone's going to the hospital. Now, I don't remember the pain in my elbow. I don't remember going to the hospital or seeing a doctor or getting x-rays. But what I do remember was the 4 phone calls my mom received at the hospital. All from my brother, all of them apologizing. All of them asking for updates and information and just to check in on me. For my entire life, I looked at Luke as the bully and myself as the victim. I always imagined that Luke loved to hurt me and to tease me and that he just genuinely didn't care about me. But these phone calls showed a whole other side to the backyard bully that was my brother. My sophomore year, I got the pleasure of being on the same baseball team with Luke. Not only would we be playing together, but he'd be catching and I'd be pitching. My first mound experience was surreal. I looked down to my brother in my first inning of varsity play, and he flashed one finger down, signaling fastball. I felt that he had called that a pitch that didn't suit the situation at hand, so I shook my head no. He proceeded to put one finger down, and I thought that maybe he didn't understand what pitch or forgot what he called before, so I shook my head again no. Luke called a timeout and jogged out to the mound and said in an annoyed voice, "Okay, what do you want to throw?" I said confidently, "Curveball." He hadn't called one all day, and I felt that he didn't believe that mine was good enough and that he didn't believe in me being better than the hitter. As he jogged back to the plate, I thought about how smart I was and how I was going to make the hitter look silly. And more importantly, that I would show Luke this time. He crouched down, held up 2 fingers. I wound back and launched, and he hit a triple. That was the last time I shook off a call from Luke. The interactions Luke and I had for most of our young lives were only during us competing. Me and Luke didn't do creative projects together. We didn't talk about our feelings, and we didn't gossip. I don't know Luke's favorite color or food, or I don't even know what he's majoring in. I think something nerdy. What I do know about Luke is that he can't make a layup with his left hand. He loves to hit curveballs, and he's always willing to go out for a quick game of catch. And I know that my brother cares about me. Yes, Luke did throw a bat at me, but he was always willing to let me play in the backyard and would stand up for me if anyone didn't want me to join. He had my back, and that's why he would get mad when I quit, because he advocated for me being let into the games, and I was being the whiny little brother. Yes, Luke did break my arm, but that wasn't his fault. He showed that he cared me through calls. He seriously was worried about me, and that mattered a lot more than our collision. Also, it was a little bit my dad's fault. He threw a bad pass. Luke called only fastballs because I have a terrible curveball. And he didn't want me to look silly out there or to be disappointed with how the game went. He cared how I felt. He wanted the best for our team and for me. I remember in my first game of preseason baseball in Florida, with me on the mound, Luke got into his stance, turned his head backwards, and said proudly to the umpire, "That's my brother on the mound." Thank you.